Welcome, everyone, to episode 2 of Spandex and Suplexes, the interview series. I thank everyone who made episode 1 a success, and we hope you keep watching us. My guest for episode 2 is a veteran of the sport of professional wrestling most notably from 1981 to 1994 in Jim Crockett Promotions and WCW, along with a stint in the WWF. He is best known for his homage to a certain immortal one. Please welcome to the show, Randy Hogan.
What's up, Nick, brother? Good to see you.
I'm glad you joined us.
Oh, it's great to be on. It's exciting, especially being part of something new, brother.
Oh, yes. Let's see. My first question for you is, what was it that made you want to become a professional wrestler?
Oh, man, you got to go back. I was probably 7, 8 years old. My grandparents got me started. My mom and dad, they thought wrestling is, just a bunch of fake crap. My grandparents, man, they stood on every bump, every word. And they got me interested. They used to take me, I was in Detroit, and they used to take me to the matches every time they come in a month. So I was raised on the old guys like Dick the Bruiser and the original Sheik, Wilbur Snyder, Bobo Brazil, guys like that. And I was just hooked from that on the rest of my life. So long story short, I was always a fan, went to matches wherever I happened to lay my head at the time, and played in a band. And we traveled around the country, and we were playing at a Holiday Inn circuit in the South and in Columbus, Georgia. We were like a house band almost. And Wednesday night they had TV taping there when they had the territory days.
Yeah.
And the wrestlers Wednesday nights would come in because they stayed there. The Continental Lover, Eddie Mansfield, who I became good friends with, Wahoo McDaniels, guys like that, they were the ones who were coming in. And I'm like a kid in a candy shop, I'm up on stage, I played the drums, and I'm looking out, and I see these idols of mine walking in. And I was just so excited. So I go down, say hi to them, and try to get an autograph, and without really trying to bug them too much. And Eddie Mansfield lived in Columbus. So on his off time, he was there, and he used to come in and see us all the time. And he used to come over to the Holiday Inn when I was there, and he would go by the pool so he could lay in the sun and work out his tan. So I got to talk to him and everything, and he said, "Why don't you come to the gym with me sometime?" I says, "Okay." So there was an old tag team called brothers, the Oates brothers, Ted and Jerry Oates, who were big in Japan and in the Southern Circuit here also. And I started going to Jerry Oates' gym. And I followed Eddie. I talked to him when he was traveling the country and stuff. So then I was in the restaurant business, and my travels brought me down to Florida. And I was managing a restaurant, and they decided they're going to close the restaurant. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Well, don't close it. Let me, continue to work like a franchisee." Well, anyways, it didn't work out. I was young and green and everything. So what happened, I said, this wrestling stuff, I was just so hooked on it as a fan. I said, I just really wonder what's real and what's fake. Because I didn't know. There was no internet or nothing, We used to get the dirt sheets, the Wrestling Observer or whatever it was, subscribing, and it'd come out every once in a while with stuff. So I called, I was living in Boca Raton, and I called Jerry Oates. And I said, "Jared, do you know anybody down here that trains wrestlers?" He said, "Well, the only one that I know is Hiro Matsuda. And he trained like Luger and that other Hogan guy, and worked with them, and Mike Graham, Steve Kern, those kind of guys." But he's very, particular and very expensive. He says, "But, I train guys up here too." And I said, "Well, I kind of knew that, but I didn't want to ask." So long story short, I packed everything up in my car, moved up to Columbus, Georgia, got a job managing a Po Folks restaurant, which is like a country type thing. And that paid my way through wrestling school. So I started with Jerry. Now, he had in the back room of his gym, he had just like an aerobic room. No ring or anything, just mats on the floor. So that's how we learned how to mat wrestle, how to take bumps. We didn't learn with no cushiony ring. We learned on a cement floor with a little bit of cover. So you really learn to bump the right way.
Yes.
And anyways, then I got hurt. We learned to do leapfrogs. And I just came down kind of like a basketball player on the wrong side of my ankle, turned it, twisted it real bad. So that kept me out for a few months. So when I come back, Jerry's brother, Ted Oates, opened up a real wrestling school in downtown Columbus. And he had a ring and everything. So I went and talked to him when I came back. And that's really when my formal training started. Another one of my alumni there was Marty Jannetty at the time.
Yeah.
So, and the rest of us were just, a couple of us went on and turned into enhancement or jobbers or carpenters or star makers or whatever you wanted to call us.
Yeah.
And of course the other guys fade out, you know, everybody doesn't make it, it's not for them. So I had they put on my very first match was, of course it was for free and just students putting it on for the police athletic league. And so I had a match and that was it. I was done. I thought I knew what was real, what was fake. I knew the inside of the business. Little did I know. So I didn't do anything anymore. I just retired, went to this auditorium and saw the wrestling every week. Went one day and a kid that I trained with was putting up the ring. I said, Bill, what are you doing? He says, well, when they come to town, he said, they rent my ring every month. So he says, what have you been doing? I said, well, just, you know, nothing, no wrestling. And he says, I said, what are you doing? And he's wrestling some little bar up in, I don't know where it was, Athens, Georgia, somewhere in North Georgia, little bar. He says, why don't you come with me and bring your stuff sometime? And I said, well, I'm not going to bring my stuff because this has been, like I said, a half a year or more. I said, but I'd like to come watch you. So I went up and it was kind of fun. Just a bunch of drunks in a bar and a little typical outlaw show or indie show, they call it now. Mm-hmm. So we went to, so I went a couple of weeks with him. And when he said, bring your stuff, bring your stuff. So I brought my stuff. Luckily or unluckily, somebody didn't show up. So the promoter said, hey, Bill, does your buddy want to work? So Bill comes out and I was just sitting there having a beer. And he said, you want to work? I said, well, okay. So I went back to the promoter and he said, you're going to wrestle this guy named Animal. I said, okay, that's cool. He said, what's your name? I said, well, Randy Franklin. My dad's name was Frank. You know, I had the hair and the mustache always. Of course, it was dark brown at the time. So I wrestled the Animal and got beaten in a screw finish. So he said, can you come back next week? I said, sure. He said, well, what we're going to do, we're going to change you. He says, we're going to call you Hal Hogan. And I thought about it and I said, well, I don't know. He said, you know, you look like that Hulk Hogan guy. Now, Hogan at the time was just coming up, you know, in the 70s, or being visible. And I said, can we drop the Hal? You want to do Hogan, that's fine. Just call me Randy, which is my real name. And he says, okay, you're going to be Randy Hogan, and you're going to be his cousin. I said, well, whatever you want, you know. So I went home all excited, had my girlfriend bleach my hair blonde, my eyebrows, my mustache. And I always had a dark tan, and I wasn't Hulk Hogan muscled up, but, you know, I was in shape. So that's how Randy Hogan started, and that's how I got started. Common courtesy, you know, on these shows, the other guys on the card, you get to know them and say, hey, where are you working this week? Where are you working next week? And we go see them. Common courtesy is when somebody comes to see you like that, you introduce them to the promoter. You know, say, hey, if you can ever use me, let me know. So that's how you get jobs on the indie circuit. At least that's how we used to. And finally, I was working up mainly because of the gimmick and because I knew how to wrestle. I got on a card where they would bring in a name once a month. Not a big name. Anyways, my name at this time, the guy that came in was Mike Jackson, Action Mike Jackson, who was about, I don't know, he was on AEW a couple of months ago, actually. He's 70 years old now. He can still go. Anyway, back then he was on TV every week. I said, Mike, I says, how did you get on TV? And he says, kind of the same story as the bar. He said, you know, I bring guys up quite a bit. He used to bring jobbers up. And he said, I can't guarantee, but bring your stuff and ride up with me to Atlanta, WTVS at the time, which was Crockett's NWA. And I said, okay, so same story. They were short. J.J. Dillon was doing the booking. He said to Mike, you know, does Hogan want to work? I said, well, sure I did. Scared to death. So my first match, actually this was like the fifth match of my life, first time on TV against the Warlord and the Barbarian. I never seen people this big before. So I'm going through the match, a tag match, and the Barbarian threw me in. And of course, anytime there's an element of risk, you tell the guy, okay? He throws you in the ropes, he's going to say elbow, drop kick, whatever it's going to be. So he says, boo-boo. Now here I'm a young kid full of adrenaline on TV for the first time, still a kid in the candy shop. So I hit them ropes going full speed, not knowing what's there. Boo-boo, what the hell is boo-boo, you know? Next thing I know is I got a foot in the face, a size 15 right in the nose, broke my nose on TV, blood going all over, hit me. So back in the locker room anyways, of course, everybody's trying to tend to you and everything. And what it was is he said, as he was throwing me in, big boot. You know, he's Tongan or Samoan or something. But such a strong accent, all I heard was boo-boo. And he's saying big boot. So I didn't watch for the big boot, and it splattered my nose.
Yeah.
But then they said, good job, Hogan, can you come back next week? I said, well, sure. So that's how I started with the NWA, WCW. Then Ted Turner bought it, fired a lot of the jobbers because now Ted Turner with Jim Herd and Bischoff and them, they wanted guys that actually knew how to work. Because a lot of the jobbers, first time they ever got in a ring was then when they were getting squashed by the Road Warriors or somebody like that. Now they wanted guys that could get in there with Larry Zbyszko or even Brad Armstrong that knew how to wrestle and could do a wrestling match, as well as could be a piece of meat for guys like Abdullah the Butcher and the Road Warriors that they're supposed to make, you know, bigger and stronger than life. And so guys like me, George South, Italian Stallion, there was about 5 or 6 of us that stayed and did TV every week, 3 hours of taping every Wednesday. And then they said, well, can you do some house shows? I said, well, sure. So I started doing house shows, you know, in the area, in the Georgia, Alabama area. And then they say, well, can you travel? I said, well, sure I can. So now we're going all up and down the East Coast to Michigan and out to Florida and everywhere in between. And I did that until I was in a match with Rick Steiner in Savannah, Georgia. And I wrestled him a few times before, and he used to do a lot of belly-to-back suplexes. Well, every time he did them to him, I'd land on my head, and that shit hurts. So he went. I was working with Savannah, and he went behind me, and I knew it was coming, so I tried to turn just to catch it on the meat of my shoulders instead of my head, and I cracked my clavicle. Mm-hmm. So that was it. So, of course, tell the ref, you know, my shoulder, you know, take it home. But evidently he didn't pass that on to Steiner. He just said, you know, all right, take it home. So Steiner gave me a power slam off the ropes. And that, it just felt like I got shot, you know. Yeah. So that pretty much ended my full-time WCW stuff, which was the bulk of my job. I'd do an occasional WWF thing, you know, if they came by, whatever else, but very, very few, very sporadic. So I came back down to Florida and bought a restaurant, and that was my life. I ended up with 7 restaurants and sold the last one about 10 years ago, got married, moved from Lakeland, Florida to Orlando, where I'm at right now. And that was the whole thing. There's my whole life history. I took away all your questions.
Oh, no, I still got a few.
Good. Go, brother, go.
Yeah. One question I have is, when you were starting out, who were some of your biggest influences in the business on your in-ring work and your character?
Oh, wow. Well, it's funny because I never did the Hogan character all through my wrestling years. If you see any of my promo pictures or anything, I've had turquoise trunks and turquoise boots. I had a black velvet robe with sequins and turquoise inside and everything. I always went by Randy Hogan for a number of reasons. First of all, because in my restaurants, the newspaper picked up on it and said Randy Hogan, professional wrestler, just bought restaurant. So I was like a Ronald McDonald. You know, mom and dad would say to the kids, where do you want to go out and eat? Oh, let's go see Randy Hogan. Because I'd tell them a little bit about certain guys, and I'd give them a 5x7 picture and everything. So the Hogan thing stayed alive, and because of that, I kept in touch with a lot of the other wrestlers, you know. So starting out, I really, really wanted to be like the original Sheik, but I couldn't do the crazy like that. And I thought still that day, I thought the Sheik was really a Sheik, you know, from Syria or something. I didn't know that he's a promoter in Michigan. But Dick the Bruiser, I always liked the heels, you know. So I was brought up as a little kid, kind of idolizing them. Once I knew a little bit more about wrestling, I kind of watched everybody and tried to pick up from a lot of people. The Hogan gimmick, I picked up a little bit, like with the ear thing, you know, and what you gonna do, brother, and all that. But I still tried to keep my own persona. But I was forced to keep up this Hogan. Am I his cousin? Am I his uncle? Am I his nephew? I'm whatever he wants me to be. I don't care. Pin me, pay me. You know, that was the attitude back then. Certain influences or people, I guess, that I really watched carefully was there's an old, I guess, an enhancement guy, Bob Cook from Florida here, who they said, even Jerry Lawler said, had the best punch in the business. And that's hard to do. And I never did master that, but I always wanted to do that. Bobby Eaton, Midnight Express, who I wrestled them more than anybody with Cornette, and we got very close. Bobby could sell better than anybody. Simple things, like if somebody punched him, you know, ow! If somebody punches you in the face, the first thing you're going to do is go, you know, grab it. You see guys now getting hit in the face and they bob their head, and that's it. It's like nothing. To me, that's all part of selling. It's part of the visual. It's part of what makes it really look real. So I watched that, and then as Hogan really developed his personality and really come on with Hulkamania and that. Okay, I just picked up some of his mannerisms. I had my own finishing hold and that, but every once in a while I dropped the leg drop. Okay, the Hogan thing, and so that was kind of my influences as far as how I worked. Which leads me into another probably should be question. It probably is, but have you ever met Hulk Hogan? Well, I have never had a face-to-face conversation with him. When he joined WCW, they had a ticker tape parade down here at Disney World, MGM. And I was in the audience. I worked for a radio station. I had a little 3-minute thing where I would just give information right off the dirt sheets, pretty much. Just a little update, what's going to happen and everything else. So they sent me as a real reporter to cover it. And I was like right in the front with guys. And I was in my street clothes, but I still had the gimmick going on. And he looked back, and he looked down at me and just kind of a little nod, you know. I was thrilled. To me, that was a major acknowledgement. He saw me. He knew me. And that's the closest I ever got.
Yeah.
So flash forward to a year and a half ago at the convention, the big event in New York. I was brought in there as a wrestler. Randy Hogan is a talent, selling pictures and autographs and all that. And who is right directly 8 feet in front of me? Jimmy Hart, J.J. Dillon. Now, in real life, Jimmy Hart and Hulk are best friends. They have outside business interests together. And again, all these guys, you know, I got Demolition sitting right back to back behind me. I got Barry Horowitz and Max Moon next to me on one side. I had Mr. Hughes and the Killer Bees on the other side. I had Deborah McMichaels over on one side, and then again, right in front of me, looking at him like I'm looking at you all day long, Jimmy Hart. I says, you know, I got to do it. So at the end, when they were breaking down everything, I walked across. I said, Jimmy, introduced myself, of course. And I said, would you mind if I had a picture taken with you? He said, no, brother, come on. I says, great. And I thanked him. And I said, you know, I was really nervous because I know your relationship to Hulk, and I didn't know, you know, the whole get up because I had everything on, including the boots and the tie-dyed dyed yellow and red leggings on and everything. He said, no, brother. He said, not a problem at all. He said, let me tell you. He says, you know, I talk to Hulk. I talk to Terry, of course. I talk to Terry every day. He said, and your name has come up. He said, now you're not the topic of conversation, but through the years, your name has come up. Like, who's this Hogan guy? And he said, but you know, every time, he said, you never did us wrong. When Hogan went NWO, turned heel for a while, I did the same thing. And he said, we appreciate everything that you have done in honoring us by, you know, I never got wrapped up in any controversy or drugs or boozing or any of the bad stuff that a lot of the guys do. He said, we appreciate it. He says, you go, you do what you want, you know. He says, we're 100% behind you. And again, just like that first time I was in a ring, Kid in the Candy Shop, I was thrilled. So I kind of got an endorsement from Hulk through his best friend, Jimmy Hart, and that was it.
That's awesome.
So that's that story.
No, one of my favorite things I saw you did with the character is that you and Jim Cornette did this famous picture for Pro Wrestling Illustrated.
Yes.
Where you did an homage to the Freddie Blassie Hulk Hogan famous picture.
May of 1989. And I have those pictures, and I sell them on my website, by the way. Anyways, yes, that was a trip because back then when you when WCW took it over and kept some of us on, I found out two things were going on. First of all, they were always jobbing me out because of Hogan. I was one of the few enhancement guys that didn't have to change his name. The Monday Night Wars were starting up, going on, and in their mind, showing superiority over Hogan's. It's like, yeah, we'll show you what we do to Hogan's because Hogan was their big star, and they're going to beat my brains out, you know. Jimmy Cornette was doing commentary one day. And so, I don't know who it was against. Somebody had me hanging over the ropes, you know, the camera right there. And Cornette said, boy, I bet his wish his big brother was here right now. So then people started thinking I'm his brother and that. No. Anyways, the jobbers that could work, the stars, the over guys, actually, in some cases, had to say so, who they worked. Like Ric Flair would say, I want to work George South a lot, you know. Still jobbers, but he could work with them in that. I was light at the time. I was barely 230, 220s, which was small. So guys like Vader, the Road Warriors, these guys could throw me around however they wanted it. And I didn't care because I knew how to fall. You know, do what you want. Like I said, pin me, pay me. So I worked the Midnight Express. Every captain, I worked through Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey, Randy Rose, and Stan Lane, which was my favorite bunch. But in working them, you don't cry, you don't whine, you take what they give you, and you go back. They say, hey, put me with Hogan. So I got that way where I worked a lot with Sting. Sting and Luger were tag teaming at the time. So I was like, those guys a lot. Vader, unfortunately, a couple of times. And the Midnight Express all the time. So I got to know Jimmy well in that. So I don't know what was going on. We were at a taping. We had just finished. Bill Apter was there. And the guy says, come over here. We got an idea. He says, okay. So they said, you know, do you know the pose with Blassie? And, of course, everybody did because I read all the magazines. He says, okay, I want you to pick your arm up. He said, don't flex nothing. Don't flex a muscle. Get some kind of a crazy look on your face. And Jimmy Cornette says, wait a minute. Let me get in there. So he gets this piece of paper and writes 24 on it, you know, like instead of inches, centimeters. And that's how Jimmy got into it, you know, and that was all. Next thing I know, it's in that article. So really brought a lot of not so much credibility, but visibility to me. So then, you know, after I really quit full time, which was, as you said, 1994-ish, I've pretty much forgotten. And then a couple of years ago, I get a call. Now there seems to be an interest in the nostalgia. You know, people want the old guys. There's not a lot of old guys like me left anymore. So now they want to see some of the old guys. So I got a call. You want to do this convention? Never did one before. I says, hell yes. Can't believe it. I'm in Florida. They're flying me to New York, giving me a place to stay, feeding me, putting me in a room with all my idols, and paying me for it. So it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. And so we did that on Saturday, and Sunday we did another one up in Albany, WrestleFest, which they just had this past weekend again. And then then the coronavirus started. Actually, the first week of March is when the New York convention was. I hopped on a plane on Monday morning. Tuesday is when they started realizing that, hey, we got a problem, started closing everything down. So that pretty much ended all the conventions through the end of this year coming up. So I did nothing. Well, when I was training, like I told you, initially doing leapfrog, screwed up my ankle. Well, I never got it fixed. It wasn't broke, I don't think, a bad sprain. But as you get older, arthritis sets in, and I was hobbling around to the point where I couldn't even move around without a cane. And I said, you know, let me see if I can't get something done with this. So finally in September, just a few months ago, I had my ankle replaced. Kind of like a knee replacement. They put a prosthetic in there. It was either that or have it fused. If I had it fused, I'd be gimping around. I'd never do nothing. I'd never drop another leg. I'd never be able to do nothing, you know. So right now I'm still mending from that, and I just got off I went from a cast to a boot, and from a boot to a brace, and now it's just a matter of building up my leg muscles that have atrophied over the last 3 months of laying on the couch watching Dr. Phil and wrestling. And so that's where I'm at now. So now I'm getting some calls for next year, the conventions again. So I've got 4 or 5 of them.
That's great. And as you know, a lot of people know, Jim Cornette's a very famous and infamous figure in the world of professional wrestling. And
Absolutely.
And we all know how he is on screen. I've heard a lot of people over the years saying he's the same person off screen. What was your experience with him?
Exactly. Yeah. He is the same quick-witted, sharp-tongued guy back then, in the locker room, outside the locker room, or on the stage. He is the same. And I got to say, he is one of I had 3 favorites up there that were actually friendly. You know, us enhancement guys, we're kind of like in the corner by ourselves. You know, you're in this room with all these big stars and that. Nobody talks to us or nothing. Jimmy Cornette, because of me working with Midnight Express so much, we got on very good terms. Kevin Sullivan, who was wonderful. He was in the gorilla position in that, which he was on the monitor, and he'd tell you when to go to the ring and everything. And it just started out like that. And then I had a match against him, the Varsity Club. It was him and Mike Rotunda and Steve Williams at the time. So I worked with him, and I got hung in the tree of woe when he comes running across the ring and puts his hip into your belly. Anyways, same story. I just got to like him. And after that, instead of Hogan, go to the ring, it was Randy. It's like he started calling me by my first name. And again, it just meant so much to me, because I never lost the fan part of me to this very day. So there was Cornette, there was him, and there was Terry Funk. Terry Funk saw all us little mice in the corner in the locker room. He walked across to every one of us, looks you right in the eye, and says, "Hello, my name's Terry Funk. What's your name?" He says, "I am so glad to meet you." Shakes your hand, very sincere, looking in the eye. None of the other guys did that, you know. This was when Luger thought that Luger, you know, was, well, he'd been humbled quite a bit, but back then he just thought he was everything. Sting was always friendly but cool until you worked him a couple times and he got to know you. then he was friendly. And a couple of guys were like that. So there was not a whole lot of disrespect. There were a couple of them, Vader being the biggest one that nobody wanted to work because he hurt people and didn't care.
Yeah.
I don't think it was intentional, but he broke one back, you know. He had me, and in fact, it's on YouTube and all over the place. The match one of them that I had with him, where he gave me, you know, he does those monkey things off the, like gives you a pancake slam. He did like 2 or 3 of them to me. They thought I was hurt for real. The referees, Nick Patrick and them, came out of the locker room, and they all came into the ring to take me out because they thought I was legit hurt, which I was hurt and banged up. I wasn't going to complain. I wasn't going to tell nobody. But they could see it. They said, man, this stuff's real. He's hurt. We got to go out there and help him back, which they did. And I said, it's okay. I'm fine. But Vader, like I said, he took liberties with little guys, especially little guys like me that he could throw around and punch around and wouldn't complain and would take it. So, but that got me working every week. So that was job security right there. Keep your mouth shut, do what you're told.
Yeah, one fun fact I found about you is that you actually wrestled Dustin Rhodes in his first ever TV match.
With Kendall Windham. He was the Young Broncos. Yep. It was fun. That was another good short story. We're in the match, and of course they're calling the match. You know, back then nothing was choreographed. You didn't work nothing out. You knew how long you're going to wrestle. You know who's going over. That's it. So when they're going through the match, and I'm in there with Dustin, and he shoots me into the turnbuckle. Didn't say nothing. He came over, and like he froze. A dead spot. He didn't do nothing. He didn't say nothing. So, you know, 10 seconds seems like 20 minutes. So I started calling the match. I said, throw me across the other turnbuckle and give me an elbow. He used to do the Dusty Rhodes bionic elbow once in a while, too, at the time. So he shot me in, gave me the elbow, you know, and then he tagged out to Kendall. Kendall come in and did something to me, and then they tagged another guy in. But that was the whole story. So at the end of the night, walking out of the locker room, and I had never talked to Dusty before. Dusty Rhodes is coming down the hall. I'm going the other way. You know, he's kind of like nodded to acknowledge. He says, Hoagie. He calls me Hoagie. Hoagie, thanks for taking care of my boy out there. So I don't know if Dustin said something. If Dusty, who was really had a keen eye for that, noticed that there was that spot or whatever, I don't know. But again, another high spot. The only conversation that I ever had with Dusty was, thanks for taking care of my boy, Hoagie. And that was it. So Dustin was great. Yeah. I mean, just a nice, polite young kid, you know.
He's still going.
Him develop. Yes, to see him develop in that. He's, you know, he had his demons for a while there, I guess, as a lot of the younger big guys did. But, again, just a wonderful kid. I saw him a couple of years ago, actually at a Publix. He used to live by me here. And saw him at a grocery store and talked to him a little bit. But there's a lot of us that live right here in this area. A lot of the talent somehow ends up down here in Florida. So there's I live like Cena's got a place here. Bill DeMott lives by me. Glacier lives a few minutes away. And once in a while we'll talk either through Facebook or Fred Ottman, you know, Shockmaster, or we'll see each other. And Barry Horowitz, who I got pretty close with, you know, we keep saying we're going to go on tour together because you got the number one jobber of the WCW against the number one jobber of WWF at the time. So that's a joke. We had some pictures taken together, and I think we're going to do a couple of conventions this year together also on that thing, just to generate some, just to keep us relevant, I guess.
That's awesome. I think you briefly mentioned this during some of your stories. Who are some of your favorite people to work with in the ring?
Midnight Express were great. Sting was good. There was a lot of good workers. It's easier for me, the ones that were respectful. You know, Larry Zbyszko was one. Junkyard Dog was hilarious.
Yeah.
You're trying not to laugh in the middle of the match. You know, he's cracking jokes while you're wrestling. He's not calling spots. He gets you down in a front face lock and he'll be cracking jokes or something. Just hilarious guy. I wrestled a match against Al Perez down here once. And it was the same story with him and Larry Zbyszko, where we were the last match on TV, and they ran out of time, so it was just a really quick match. Both of them, after the match, come up to me and apologized because he said, he says, I'm sorry I couldn't give you anything, which means give me some spots. He says, we ran short of time, we had to go on. But they apologized for not giving me, an enhancement guy, some spots. That just showed me so much class and respect and everything. So those are the guys that I really, really appreciated,
Yeah.
As far as I worked through every name of that era in WCW. The Road Warriors, they were big and gruff and everything, but they were nice. Abdullah the Butcher, another little story, beat my brains out. He was almost like Vader. And so I go back I wrestled him, and he, after hit me in the head with a belt, with not the leather part of it, with the metal part of it, rushed across the ring. And this was on TV too. Threw me out of the ring. Gary Hart gave me a kick and then threw me back in the ring. And Abdullah got this kendo stick, whipping me like a dog with it. For real. I mean, really whipping me. So then he dropped as we called it, the flying lat, which is like 400 pounds grabbing on you. So I go back in the locker room. It was a 3-hour taping. That was the first hour. So I go back in the locker room, and he was sitting there with his feet propped up, smoking a cigar. And again, especially the jobber, you always go to the over guy. Thanks for the match. No complaining, no nothing, And Abdullah says, yeah. I said, you okay? I said, yeah. I said, but you about beat me to death with that kendo stick. Smoking a cigar. He goes, son, it's good for the business. Now, that was old school mentality, but here's a guy that really whipped me, not apologizing. It's good for the business. Do it real, make it real. If you can't take it, get out of the business. Total different attitude than they have today, I think.
Yeah.
So he was another one of the rough ones, but yet he was just different, Road Warriors, though, they were good. Axe and Smash, they're great guys. Like I said, Sting was. Luger a bit stuck on himself, and then he got to talk to you after he wrestled you 3 or 4 times, but he still loved himself. So that's about the lowdown on the guys.
I know you mentioned you're still a big fan of professional wrestling.
Always.
Yes.
Every week. My wife gets so mad at me because I'm flipping channels, and she's learned to appreciate, some of the wrestling stuff, but she's hardly what you would call the big fan. I mean, she'll go around the house in a moment and give me a woo, a Ric Flair or something. But that's about it. But yeah, so I'm flipping between AEW and NXT every Wednesday night, flipping channels back and forth. Neither of which am I a fan of. And I'll tell you why. I can't get invested in the characters. We like to see people that we know. We used to tune into WWF or the Main Event or WCW or the Monday Night Nitro, whatever. We wanted to see Sting and Luger and Ric Flair. We wanted to see Hulk Hogan and Sergeant Slaughter and that. Now you turn these other two on, and you're seeing a bunch of kids that weigh maybe 175 pounds. They don't look like wrestlers, a lot of them. They have some old talents in there, like Dustin Rhodes and Jericho and a couple other ones. But it seems like the business has changed so much as far as what they do, how they do it. It's very cookie cutter. Everybody's doing the same moves. Everybody's doing 10 monkey spots. Everybody's kicking out of everybody else's finisher. There are no superstars on the horizon. There's no Bruno Sammartino or Hulk Hogan or Ric Flair. There's no one guy coming up to rule the wrestling world anymore.
Yeah.
So it's hard for an old school guy like me to get invested in the product. So I still watch Raw and SmackDown, you know, on a regular basis, because most of the guys I've seen them develop.
Yeah.
The other ones, not so much, you know. And then they get a bright spot doing stupid stuff like Charlotte Flair, who I think is a real talent, and for whatever the reason, she gets off TV for a while, goes through some surgeries and whatever. And they bring somebody up, and they bring them up, and then they got nothing for them, okay, like a Finn Balor or somebody. So then they send them back down. Next thing you know, they're releasing them, you know. It's just hard to get invested in a long-term storyline. Like there used to be storylines, you know, back when they had San Martino and Zbyszko, back when down here when they had Dusty Rhodes and Kevin Sullivan, when he went from the Varsity Club and then he went to the dark side, and he was Lucifer, and he was the Legion of Doom, or not the Legion of Doom, but something with Doom. You followed that for like a year and a half at a time. But there's none of that no more. So
Yeah. I've seen other old school wrestlers like The Undertaker say similar things. I think.
yeah, probably. I think all the old guys feel pretty much the same. That we miss some of the old storytelling and stuff. Some of the characters. I'm sorry. I had some ribs cooking here, and I'm just telling my wife to better get them off the grill. But yeah, a lot of us old guys will have the same, not complaints, because these guys are such great athletes. I mean, they do stuff we were never thinking about. You know, we might take a chair or 2x4 upside the head or something, but these guys jumping off of scaffolds and through tables and all that kind of stuff, and doing all kinds of monkey flips off the top rope. Man, if we did something off the top rope, it was a finish.
Yeah.
We were done.
I remember, yeah.
And if you got into somebody's finisher, no way were they gonna let you kick out. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's one thing that kind of bothers me too. Someone actually came up to like the late '90s, 2000 fan, because I do think there's finishers aren't really protected anymore. Like there's too many. You know, nowadays you have to do like 20 finishers to make it believable to somebody who's put down.
Yes.
It kind of defeats the purpose of calling it a finishing move.
Yeah, because it's not anymore. They don't even call it finishing moves anymore. So they don't even say, okay, now he's Flair. Okay, he's setting up the figure four. You know, this is going to be it. Well, it's not going to be it, because the guy's going to turn it over and he's going to reverse it or something. You know, the Undertaker, it was Goldberg, you know, kicked out of after the tombstone, you know, he came out of two. And just solid finishers like that are getting people have lost all respect for them, even though they're setting up. How many times does Matt or Jeff Hardy go for that twist of fate and not hit it?
Yeah. 9
out of 10 times. They don't hit it. So why do they have a name for this twist of fate? Usually that would have been a neck breaker and an ending move, but not no more. So that's just an old school complaint. I don't want it to sound like an old man, but that's kind of how we look at that stuff. But the athleticism is wonderful.
Are there any guys from the current generation that you're really impressed with?
My favorite is Dolph Ziggler.
Yeah.
He has been right along. Now you talk about somebody that could be a main eventer that unfortunately stays in that upper mid card level. He does whatever he's making good money. Okay, so I understand it, but he does what he's told. He does any kind of gimmick he's told. He's just a great talent. He's good on a mic. He looks good. He wrestles good. He sells good. He's somebody I really, really like. I like Roman Reigns. I think they missed the boat with the way they were pushing him back a couple of years ago, where people like the Cena complex, you know, whether everybody's sick of seeing him, sick of hearing about him and everything. So now that they turned him heel and he's got his own little Samoan faction going.
Yeah.
To take place of the Shield and some of the other ones. Maybe they can reinvent him if the writers get creative. I think they need more wrestlers' input in the storylines than non-wrestling people who come from the entertainment industry trying to write a story. Guys like Kevin Sullivan. Again, Sullivan is brilliant at that. Cornette is good at that. Vince Russo is good at that. Now, they've all done some stupid stuff in their mouth, and that gets them in, and they make mistakes. But all these guys have been there. They've seen it. They've seen the mistakes. Going way back to Eddie Graham, who they said was one of the best as far as building a heel. He was the best at building a heel. And he's the one that taught Kevin Sullivan. Sullivan cut his teeth on Eddie Graham. Kevin went in his office and opened up a book, and it had all like the main events for the next year listed out, like on a calendar. And Eddie walked in and saw Mike looking at that, or Sullivan, and said, "What are you doing?" So, well, this would just open. He says, "Do you want to learn about that stuff?" Sullivan said, "Well, sure." I said, "Sit down." So he actually taught psychology, how to book matches and that. So, and Kevin took that and is very well respected no matter where. You very seldom hear any bad publicity at all about Kevin Sullivan. For all the characters he's played, he's just one of the well-respected guys.
Taskmaster. Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. But you're young. You remember the Taskmaster. I go back to when he was the Boston Battler, teaming up with Mike Graham and Steve Kern.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When I first got into wrestling, I decided I had to learn everything about it. So I went back all the way to the 70s and on up. But I have one last question for you. So
Sure.
I don't want to keep you from your ribs too long.
It's okay, man. It's okay.
What do you think what was your proudest moment of your career? What was you think it was your biggest achievement?
Three moments. The first one, when I started training and went to Ted Oates' gym and first set foot in a real ring. I thought back to my grandparents, taking me to Olympia Auditorium back in Detroit when I was 7, 8, 9 years old. How proud they would have been, to see that. Tears in my eyes, number one. Okay, first time I stepped in a ring. Second time, obviously, was the first time I was on TV. And again, my grandparents, they lived right across the street from me. So after school, I go there because my parents were working and stuff. And we were all very close, even though my parents were wrestling fans. But they were so much. And the first time on TV, I thought, God, Grandma Gramps, if you could just see me now, And, of course, the last time was when I won my very first title. That always stands. That was a tag team title, but who cares, And then I got my first individual title. Alabama Junior Heavyweight Champion.
Yeah.
And then I went on to a Junior Heavyweight Champion and Georgia Tag Team Champions and Alabama Tag Team Champion and Florida Junior Heavyweight Champion and some People's Choice Champion. I don't know, but those were proud. But the very first one is always the same. Even though the promoter kept the belt, you couldn't bring it home or nothing, Yeah. But still, man, I'm a champ,
Yeah, I know the big old belt. You have to put a deposit just to carry it around. That's how Flair was able to take it to WWF because they didn't pay him the deposit pack.
Yeah. Well, a couple of them got trashed,
Yeah. Well, it's really awesome that you came on the show with us, and you've been a really great guest. I saw that.
Thrilled.
Yeah, I saw that.
Thrilled following your last show, with Patriot, with Dell. He's another old companion, So it's great hearing some of his old stories and stuff too. So,
yes, I saw that you have these merch.
Yes, sir.
That people can get from you. How can people get some of your merch?
Let me tell you, I am so simple. All I got is Facebook, and if they want some Randy Hogan stuff, all they do is go on Facebook and click on Randy Hogan Stuff. It's that simple.
All
My
right.
merchandise is there. Little stories are there. I put updates on my ankle recovery. When I send some stuff out, sometimes they'll take a picture, with my picture and say, thanks for the picture, whatever else. So that Randy Hogan Stuff, or my real last name, which is Muehl. You can look on the Facebook under Randy Meal. And it's got Hogan in parentheses. Basically the same stuff, but I don't advertise other people's stuff on my Randy Hogan Stuff because it's all Randy Hogan stuff. So
Yeah, I'll be sure to put a link to that in the description below. All right. Once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. You told me a lot of things I didn't even know. I was a big wrestling nerd. It's great to hear from the people who lived it.
Nick, thank you so much. And it's I've always been kind of humble. I never really went to my head, and it's so humbling at this point in my life, 30 years after my career, that people like you still keep us little guys relevant, the enhancement guy. I can see everybody wants the Undertaker and Sting and all them guys, but there's not a whole lot of quality podcasts, especially new ones starting up like you have, that takes any kind of an interest in us. And speaking from all of them, I appreciate you guys and all the fans that tune in to hear our stories.
Awesome. Yeah, hopefully we can get some more episodes down the line. Once again, thank you so much for joining me, Randy.
Nick, thank you. Anytime, brother.
And that wraps up episode 2 of Spandex and Suplexes, the interview series. I'd like to once again thank Randy Hogan for joining us. I'd also like to thank the viewers out there who made our last video so very successful, and we hope we continue to get your views in the future. If you want to help us out a little further, hit that like button down below, hit the subscribe button to keep following videos from FloridaGeekScene, and be sure to check out Spandex and Suplexes, a wrestling review, every Saturday afternoon on FloridaGeekScene.com. Until next time, I'll see you at ringside.